Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live session. I can't believe it's low code. I'm Luis Giraldo, Vice President of OutSystems, and I have the pleasure to be joined by my two guests here, Mark Schwartz, as well as Adrian James, and they'll be talking a little bit about their experience leveraging low code to drive business critical applications with an AI infused. So we just got a little time with you today, so thank you for all for joining, and we're going to touch on a couple of topics I think that are kind of front and center for everyone out there in the current climate. I think it's clear that with the rise of inflation and the IT budgets being somewhat constrained at the moment, and still revenue targets being out there, is that many leaders within the IT and business are coming together to try to figure out how things can be done differently. And so I think this topic is a great topic for all of you to understand. Can you bring low code application development into your organization to drive not just modernization, but cost effective solutions out into the market quicker and at scale? So without further ado, I'll jump right in. And Mark, I want to start with you to kind of give a little bit of background on your role at Both Ends Believing, and a little bit about your kind of initial journey with low code application development and OutSystems, and talk about what you've done.
Sure. Absolutely. Greetings to all. Thanks for taking the time. I've been in the role of president at our small nonprofit, Both Ends Believing, for about 5 years. What we primarily do is we assist foreign governments. We partner with foreign governments. We currently have 14 countries. And we assist them in managing institutionalized children, essentially. So we will create digital records for them, and that can be anything from health records to educational accomplishments to family that is known, things of that nature. And then our software is modular in design, so we create this digital record, and then the next module is we assist our partners in getting those children on a plan to a family. A lot of times, usually you can reunify children with their birthright parents or extended families, but sometimes that's not possible, in which case we, would march down the path to adoption. And then from there, a placement's made, and then we monitor that placement. And we currently have over 40,000 records, as I mentioned, across 14 countries. And that's essentially, a quick snapshot of what we do.
And Mark, can you talk a little bit, because I'm sure the audience would like to understand sort of just very quickly your evaluation. There's obviously a lot of options out there, a lot of alternatives. Low code is, there's this kind of hype, right, that now is becoming real in the sense of, is it really ready for prime time, and can it build some of these mission critical applications? So can you talk a little bit about your evaluation? What made you kind of go this direction, and what was your experience?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is for us. As I mentioned, we have 4 full-time developers. We've got about 35 people on international staff, boots on the ground. And so, we've got to keep our developers creating code. And when they drift into an analyst role, or perhaps into a security consultant role, or anything like that, they're not writing code, and it's hard for us. And so we took a good hard look at different options, and the many things that OutSystems or a low-code environment offers us just fit right for us, whether it's how we deploy our software, how we recover in a disaster, the logging, all kinds of things. And so it was an immediate fit. We just don't have the firepower and the wherewithal. A lot of times, too, for nonprofits, which is what we are, you have to have an emotional attachment. And for code people and engineers, it's a little harder to seek out those people. So having that extra kind of low code punch helps us a lot.
Got it. So as far as probably smaller staff than maybe most out there, you had sort of emphasis on producing something that was going to be able to scale, but in a cost effective and in quick time to market. So obviously that's very representative, I think, of my conversations that I have today, right, out with many leaders, both on the business and IT side, which is there's a SaaS sprawl of sorts. There's no shortage of options to consider, whether it's custom build or commercial products off the shelf. And then you've got talent shortage, right, associated with that. And then you got to be able to do that right quickly and cost effectively over, whether it's a year or two or multi-year period. So Adrian, I want to turn to you because, if you could give a little bit of background on your role, because I think you have an interesting story as well. Is it's kind of that startup mentality and disruptive nature as far as what you're trying to deliver, and kind of your evaluation through what solution to bring to market for your solution.
Of course. I'm Adrian Jaimes. I'm the CEO of Copal Access. And Copal Access is essentially a neobank that targets immigrants in the United States, and particularly Mexican immigrants. So we saw a gap in the market, that there was no financial services firm that tailor-made their applications, their services for this population. They kind of had to find what best suited them from them in the market. And really, there was no one that was making this customer base their priority. So that's what we brought. We brought a financial services company that will make these customers our priority, and everything we do will be tailor-made for them.
Great. And Adrian, talk a little bit about some of your kind of thought process too, as you kind of look through the different solution options. I know, as I mentioned earlier, right, we always go through when customers some are more in experimentation mode, some are more understanding that there's really no other alternative but heading in this low-code direction, regardless of who you choose. But kind of share with me sort of what was maybe the 2 to 3 really important points of, why you moved with this strategy.
Yes, for us, and Copal Access is a subsidiary of another company called Appriza Pay. I'm also CEO of Appriza Pay, and Appriza Pay is a cross-border payments platform. So our experience was primarily on back office integrations, which we're very good at. Copal Access was our first attempt at a front end, something that would be consumer facing. We were strictly B2B before this. So we needed a tool, one that would help us get to market as quickly as possible. The project was approved by our board in March 2022, and we had the goal to be live by December 2022. So we had a huge emphasis on go to market quickly. So we need a tool that would help us with that. 2, we're in financial services, so no one would trust a bank if their app had bugs all the time. So we need a tool that would help us with the quality. And 3, and I think it's important, we kind of needed a tool that would instill confidence in our devs. So our developers have a lot of experience in backend. This was their first consumer product. And we want to give them a tool that will let them know that, 1, we're investing in them. We're investing in giving them the best tools. And because we're investing in them, that would instill confidence in them. So they will be able to go to market quicker, to release new versions without release anxiety, and be able to offer that great product to this population of consumers.
Great. Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, Mark. So that's really, I think, for all of you out there, it kind of serves as two additional, initial sort of examples as far as how folks are going through sort of low code and evaluation. I think we're now going to step into a little bit more of the success story, right? And so, Mark, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit about, right? So made the decision. Now you've got to focus on connecting children with their parents, and just connecting folks across what sounds like is fairly complex, digital record that has to carry through and accuracy and security and all the things that come into it. Can you talk a little bit about sort of some of the key characteristics that were part of your solution and some of the successes that you saw early on and where you're headed in the future?
Sure, absolutely. Well, to answer the last part first, we hope to be in that 25 to 40 country range here in the near future, probably over the next year or two. So we see a pretty big need for our product. It's been accepted well. And so that growth is what we are planning for. We operate in a fluid environment, whether it's leadership changes or political turmoil in some of our countries. So we had to be nimble. We had to have a highly configurable system. And so we operate off a single line of code. It's highly configurable based upon individual country needs. And that really teed up well with OutSystems. And, whether we're provisioning the environment or we're looking at the network architecture, we deal with security vulnerabilities all the time. A child's record's critical to a country, and we just don't and having that sort of firepower behind us were, to your, first part of your question, Luis, was critical in this decision, to be able to pass that sort of responsibility off and then report back to the individual countries how we do it. It takes a little bit when we're introducing a new partner, when we're on, platform as a service and hosted data residency is always, something we work through, but we're able to do that. And so that fluid nature and just having that highly configurable environment was really probably two key things we really looked at.
Yeah, I think you raised some interesting points, Mark, and interested to learn a little bit more as far as sort of some of the lessons learned and things you can share from your adoption journey with OutSystems back with the audience. But this concept of speed is critical, right? I think that's table stakes, but that ongoing manageability, supportability, and really more agility as you kind of think about as requirements change, releases change, whether those are external factors to your point, where policies are changing, or frankly, user feedback, where things aren't necessarily working through. And I know that's a very critical aspect, Adrian, for you, right? As you're thinking about onboarding, users onto Copal Access, which is the onboarding journey is critical, right? So understanding, maybe where they drop off or where they continue and have a better experience. And so your ability to make those changes to make sure that experience is streamlined and learn from that and iterate quickly is going to be essential for driving adoption, driving scale that I think, Mark, you're referring to. And I know, Adrian, as you and I have discussed, of where you want to take this solution. So Adrian, to you, as far as talk a little bit about the solution and kind of early successes and where you guys are headed and what you foresee as the big the value add with low code.
Yes, as you mentioned, Luis, for us it's very important to make constant change, constant improvement. We know our customers, but perhaps we don't know them as well as we would like to. There's not a lot of data on this, the underserved Latino market here in the United States. So we're learning as we go, and it wasn't perfect from the start. It's still not perfect, but we're trying to make constant improvements so the application makes sense to them. And every week we're learning new things. So for us, the nimbleness that Mark mentioned is so important for us to be able to make these changes quickly and do the testing, the A/B testing, and see what works, what doesn't work, and have that continual cycle of improvement. It's been critical for our success today.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the feedback, right, that I see is it's that continuous innovation, and you're really compressing sort of this traditional sort of app development life cycle, right? And so some of these, as far as releasing new features into the market without disrupting the business. And I think what I would share with the audience too, and as we kind of step into the next topic here in a moment, a bit further, is this concept of interoperability. I think is key here, right? So full stack development or application development is what OutSystems kind of really focuses in on as a differentiation, is your ability to leverage different components, right, from this composable architecture or this enterprise to connect into core systems, for example. So there's options for all of you on the market to build a net new application from the ground up. There's also other options to drive modernization, right, or legacy transformation, where you're connecting into existing core systems that you've invested in, leveraging those investments, but not force-fitting, sort of customizing some of these tools that are not necessarily purpose-built for maybe a larger quote to cash or omni-channel or end-to-end process that I think Mark and Adrian are referring to. So I guess, Mark, can you talk a little bit about sort of the solution itself and maybe some of the kind of the wow moments that you saw that really have kind of generated a lot of this adoption, right? Whether it's changing to modify to a certain sort of culture within a country, or is it the user interface that was able to drive more a quicker process of finding, right, connecting the children with the parents, as an example? Can you maybe share some more?
Yeah, absolutely. And to kind of echo initially what Adrian said, we're on a quarterly release cycle, but we want to go to continuous release because of what Adrian just mentioned, that our application is developed directly from user input. The customs and procedures and local policy and law is different in every country, and so we can't figure that out. without that sort of continual release and that nimbleness in that. A couple of moments hit us. One, when you make a placement to a family and we record it, it's just so powerful to the people that are not only surrounding that family, but just the stakeholders. They're called primarily ministries, but the federal government's in charge of the rights and welfare of a child. Those moments when they see these families created are pretty significant and pretty powerful. And on the UI side, making that simple, making it just a web-based application that's easy to use, that they can configure. That's a big hurdle to get over. I think in the past, there's just been a lot of it. We deal in a very paper-based, and we can talk a little bit about that on the next section, but a paper-based system. And to be able to take glorified spreadsheets or paper, web enable them, sign intelligence, and then just put it in an easy UI is a big deal. And so I think two-pronged answer. I think just having the family see being created through this technology that would just not have happened. The family, we have videos that can capture or express that and show that. And then just with the simplicity of it all, those two combined are powerful.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Adrian, anything before we shift into the last topic for the session today, as far as highlighting some of the, when you really saw the power of the platform to take off? Naturally, you're early in the journey. There's a lot of work to do, but maybe some highlights. Yeah.
For us, I would say two things, Luis. One is how easy it was to create a remittance product. So remittance transaction is a complicated transaction. It's not an easy transaction. You're dealing with FX, you're dealing with regulation, and really in part because of all the know-how that my team had, but also part because of the ease of use, we were able to have our MVP remittance product very, very quickly. I mean, I'm talking, we got the project approval in March. By the early summer, we had an remittance product. So that was the kind of like the wow moment when we were like, oh, this is pretty cool. We can send money to Mexico when we just had our project approved a few months ago. So that was a big wow moment. The other moment was when we finally had our three versions, iOS, Android, and web app, when we realized that basically you have to develop once and then all the improvements go on the three different versions. That obviously, in a past life, you would have to have three different teams. And here with one tool, one team, we could develop at record pace.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think it goes back to sort of a common theme, and hopefully, leaving this with the audience, which is, we see folks leveraging the power of the platform that are small development teams that are producing an incredible amount of throughput, right? And solutions that otherwise would have taken, 60, 70+% more resources required maybe on a custom build, right? Or even customizing something that's off the shelf. So I think that the whole talent shortage of how you get more with the teams you have, how do you upskill, reskill is, I think, an opportunity. And I think how you do that cost effectively, how can you show returns in a quicker app development lifecycle for the business? So I know we don't have a lot of time left, so I'd love to kind of move to the next topic, which I think is in front and center in everybody's conversations, which is around, what's the anticipation of AI and how that kind of converges with low code, or does it take it over? I think there's differentiating opinions on it. I think just quickly from an OutSystems perspective, and I'll turn to my esteemed colleagues here and customers that are leveraging the platform that probably have their own sort of experimentation and considerations going on right now, which is, OutSystems has invested in AI actually for over roughly around 5 years. And so it's infused already within the platform from a application lifecycle development process. So, creating quality code is a big part of this, right? So how do you not just drive more innovation and less time coding, right, in sort of the traditional sense, but bringing that forward at scale, secure, where it's not compounding what is, I think, seen right now is a lot of technical debt. I talk to many clients, and they're trying to migrate old legacy code over into more modern systems. And so I think when you look at the platform, Right now, it's already has AI infused, and so there's instant app generation, there's AI-powered app editors, there's real-time visual representations of those app changes, and an extensive ecosystem of connectors. So I think that we've invested in that, and I think we're seeing that is actually going to take application development to the next level. So really, this sort of AI-powered development coupled with low-code application development. So Mark, interested to get your thoughts, right? Coming from a very paper-based, traditional process, and you're trying to digitize a lot of this too. Where do you see AI coming in, and where do you think the opportunity is to help your targets?
Well, we don't currently in a production environment have any AI applications running. We spend more and more time talking about it, both with our development team and board. There's a couple of areas where certainly it would be front and center. The simple one is just for pattern recognition off the log analysis, is to see what sort of patterns are developed in terms of usage trends. I think that's kind of an AI 101 thing. In the document processing environment, so that'd be one. The second one, the document processing environment, we, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, very paper-rich environment. And so to be able, and some are in handwriting, some are form-based, to be able to take that data, extract from an image, after a scanned image, this metadata that's relevant in some sort of an intelligent way is big. We're partnering with a company right now to try to get into that sort of environment. I think that the records are good, but they're where the children are. They aren't in a centrally located area where the interested parties can access them. So I think that is a big area. And then another one is I'll do my best to try and explain this. In terms of self-help, we operate in an environment where political climate, leadership changes, external factors can affect help, essentially. So when you're creating a digital record of a child, for example, there may be something coming down the future that if there was intelligence that could sense this political change, that would redirect the answer. That's kind of a big deal for us. I'm flying high here. I don't have specific examples of that, but what I do know is artificial intelligence can really play a role in self-help for us. And so those are probably three high-level examples that we're kind of working through right now and figuring out the best way to get those from lower-level environments into a production environment.
Yeah, I think those are interesting and somewhat what I see as a trend. We've got a number of examples coming up. Before I turn to you, Adrian, is I think this concept of leverage the power of generative AI to pull in disparate data from be it different sources, be it internally or externally. But then you have to bring that in and actually harness that in a way that then drives human in the loop or more of an interaction. And what we're seeing is that's the combination. So regardless of use case, generative AI can do that initial lift quickly up front, but that continuous, as we talked about earlier, development and then improvements of applications that are going to be used by humans, right, is then how do you complement that, right? And so there's a lot to be learned, I think, with all these different use cases of what are the guardrails and these large language models and the bias that naturally can come out of that. So more to come. I'm not an AI expert, but I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities to bring the synergies of both together to drive, I think, even more efficiencies and more output. So Adrian, curious to get your thoughts. Obviously in the banking, it's a little bit trickier, but any initial kind of considerations around sort of experimentation or areas that you think are going to be big opportunities?
Yes, I think the first one is customer care. So obviously having some kind of chatbot that is right there when the customer needs it. And this is really important during onboarding, for example, or when completing a transaction. But onboarding in particular, we ask them to take a picture of their ID. Perhaps, they put their ID on a white desk and that's why we can't take a picture. So having AI there, taking the customer by the hand and going step by step and making sure that wherever there might be a mistake or a misunderstanding, we can offer immediate help. I think that, that's very interesting and that's something we're considering. The other part is fraud and compliance. So right now, fraud controls, anti-money laundering controls, they have a lot of false positives, and false positives affect good consumers. And that's, those are the kind of transactions that really hurt the consumer experience. You're trying to send money to your mother in Mexico because she has a medical expense, and then you get flagged by compliance, and you can't, and you have to wait till someone goes and reviews your case and, finally releases the funds. That's a lot of these remittances are time sensitive. So anything we can do, or there can be an AI engine that can more quickly analyze possible fraud, possible money laundering, and reduce the number of false positives, I think would be very interesting for the industry.
Yeah, I absolutely, and we're seeing some of those examples already emerge quite a bit, Adrian, within the banks that we work with. So great. I wish we had more time. I know we just have about 4 minutes left. So I'm interested, if there's any questions. Hopefully, we can address some of those in the next couple of minutes that are top of mind. But I think what I took away from this and these stories, and I know Adrian and Mark quite well, and they're amazing kind of stories, and we look forward to kind of see what they're doing in the future. Is I think we're living in a fast-paced nature of emerging technology and innovation, right? And I think low code is not the only option here, but I think low code is definitely a catalyst to drive some of that innovation and speed and scale. And what I see is that it's now supporting what we see in our portfolio of customers. That they're using it to develop mission critical applications. And I think it ranges from whether you're just extending the front end off your core systems, or you're driving very deep integration and orchestration across complex case management and workflows, or you're building a CRM or ERP system from the ground up. I think it's really up to you. How do you think about what your business needs are, and where maybe some of the constraints are, and how you demonstrate some of those wins back into your organization, but more importantly, out into the market. So I don't think there's any questions at this time, but I did want to just say a big thank you to Mark and Adrian for sharing your stories. Please reach out to us on LinkedIn if you have questions to dig in deeper, and wishing all of you happy holidays and safe travels if you're heading somewhere, and if not, you're staying home. Time with your families and friends. And so thanks for the time, and hopefully you enjoyed the session. Take care.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Mark.